go ahead and get started here. I'm not going to do much of an introduction. I'm just going to basically turn it over and give him the majority of the time. So that's really all. The time is all yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. I don't have a microphone, so I hope you can hear me in the back. In the back, can you hear me? In the back?
Yes.
Good. Okay. You can hear me okay? Yeah. Good. I'm talking today about some of the initiatives that we're doing with the UNESCO and Commonwealth of Learning Chairs in open education resources, and sort of giving you our view of things, of where things are going and how they're doing. We're also part of the eMundus Euro project that has just started to, and we're involved in the mapping of OER initiatives, not just around Europe, but around the world. And we're just completing the Power Up project, the policies for OER uptake, where we've done studies of I think it's about 30 to 40 different countries now on their policies towards open education resources. And you can find links to these on the powerup.org website. There's 4 of us working on it now, myself at Athabasca University in Canada, and Wayne Mackintosh at Otago Polytechnic in New Zealand, Amiel in Brazil at the University campus, and Fred Mulder of the Open University of the Netherlands. And we have many sponsors. I won't go into them, but there's a list of them. And we have quite a few partners around the world. We are pushing for an OER Chairs network, and we are actively working with the people in Africa and Asia to extend the network so that we have OER chairs on every continent, and more than one if possible, so as we can spread the movement as widely as possible. My role in it, and our first objective, was the creation of the OER Knowledge Cloud. And now the Knowledge Cloud is designed to provide researchers with a place where they will find research, scholarly papers and reports about open education resources. And now there's about 600 such reports, papers, etc. For researchers. So it's not aimed at as OER, it is aimed at people who are researching OER. But nevertheless, if you have a course that you feel any of the material is relevant to, you can use it any way you want. And here's an example of some of the reports that are available on the OER Knowledge Cloud. The other major initiative being led by Fred Mulder of the Open University of the Netherlands is a PhD in the study of open education resources. And he has got some funding from Hewlett and the European community to support graduates who are studying open education resources, so PhD candidates or postdocs. And he is sponsoring a meeting in Cape Town, South Africa in December, which will be the first meeting of the PhD graduates and other researchers who are studying OER from a wide variety of perspectives. And this will be followed up at the OCW meeting in Slovenia in May and April, sometime spring, in the spring. And we'll have another meeting of the PhD graduates. And the idea of the Global OER Graduate Network that he's talking about is to expand the research base in open education resources, to develop good quality PhD trajectories, to collaborate with universities around the world to create a global learning network, all focused on study on open education resources, with free and easy access to the generated knowledge through the OER Knowledge Cloud. And the other initiative is the OER mapping, where Suzanne D'Antoni, formerly of UNESCO IET, and she is doing a mapping of different exercises around the world, and I am working with this group with the new eMundus Euro project to make this a much better initiative. I want to go back now, step back a ways, and as a way of looking at what's happening in the world today. And there's two ways of looking at the world. There's the scientific method, and there's the creationist method. And the scientific method takes the facts as the starting point and tries to draw conclusions. And the creationist model is you take the conclusion and then you look for facts to support it. And if we look at our educational system, there seems to be some kind of creationist belief that Hero, the Greek scholar in Alexandria, created the classroom, and since then there's been no better way of teaching. That is the way to teach, and all other ways are inferior. And it's a creationist attitude in that here's the classroom was created, and let's find some facts to support the fact that it's the best. But in fact, Hero created the Library of Alexandria school because, and this is where you had to collect people in one place because there was only one document. There was only one copy of one document. And you had a reader, and you had to assemble learners together because they wouldn't let you touch the document. They were too valuable. So the reader would then read, and that's the invention of the classroom. The classroom model was invented because of constraints of geography and access. And today, we don't have these constraints anymore. The medieval university copied that tradition, and again, we had Gutenberg who came up with the printing press, but his books were this big. They weren't the books we see today. They were books this big, and there was a lock on them. And in the Middle Ages, the students would come, and the reader or lecturer, which is French for reader, would come in with his key, open the book, and he would read. And that's how you learned. And we're again continuing this tradition as if the classroom is the ideal way of doing it. It's not the ideal way. It was really the only way in the past because of the limitations of access and geography. So I want to suggest that traditional universities, and the more they criticize open education, that we no longer defend open education, that we go on the attack and point out the fact that the emperor has no clothes. They do not have an argument. They're proceeding from a creationist view of the world, and that we need to start looking in an evolutionary way and start from the facts and work our way to conclusions from them. Traditional university quality control. The word quality never raised its ugly head in education until the online movement started booming. And then they started saying, what about quality? They never said, oh, what about quality when there was no online education? And the traditional university quality control, it's right there. That's the quality control. Put a PhD in a classroom. The PhD generally has no teacher training, no instructional design experience, but that's the quality control. Is there any content quality control? No, other than curriculum guidelines, the teacher in a traditional university can go in and do whatever they want without scrutiny from anyone else. So the quality control there is very spurious. So they don't really have much of a leg to stand on. Now, Tom Russell did us a great favor. This was about 20 years ago, but he's keeping up his research. There are now more than 500 studies that show that there's no significant difference between online learning and classroom learning, or learning with any technology, or using any media, that there's no significant difference. And at some point we have to realize that maybe maybe there is no significant difference. Maybe the media you use is not the main variable, whether you're in a classroom online, working with mobile technology or whatever. In addition to that, we've seen since, especially since the 1990s, the growth of administrative bloat, where more and more administrators being paid more and more money are contributing to the financial problems in our universities. Along with that, and partially because of that, we have the college tuition bloat, where it's rising, the tuition is rising far faster than the inflation rates and costs in other areas. So, where's the business case for the traditional university model? Because we get this all the time when we say we're pushing for open learning and online learning. Where's your business model? Well, the traditional universities have existed without a business model for 1,000 years. They have no business model. In fact, what we see, if we look back at the bloat that's happening with college tuitions and the administrative bloat and other costs, the traditional university model, it's quite clearly becoming unsustainable. It's an unsustainable model. It's unsustainable especially if we're talking about not educating 10, 20, 30% of the population, but educating 70, 80, and 90% of the population. We know we cannot do this using the traditional model. So, the Open Educational Resource University. This is the answer of public universities to the private university model of the MOOCs. And what we're trying to do is show that learners who access open education resources and acquire knowledge and skills, right now they can't have their learning assessed and accredited. We want to change that so they can have their learning assessed and accredited. That we can create pathways using open education resources to assessment and accreditation. And now we have over 30 institutions on 5 continents who are working together, and it was just announced last Friday was the inaugural session, and where we're beginning to offer courses. And what we're putting together, I call it the anti-MOOC, and we have the mini-MOOCs. And what we're doing is, instead of, as many faculty members are doing, is say, oh, the MOOCs are horrible and everything, we're taking George's advice, and we're saying, what can we do with this phenomenon? And how can we move forward in our goals by using the MOOC phenomenon? So our anti-MOOC, public universities, not private. It's not. We're not linked with any private sector companies. It's open enrollment, and the distinction between us and the corporate MOOCs is that we have open content, open educational resources. We put education first, not profit, and we give a useful credential. The Coursera credential, which I hinted at this morning, when you click on the license, you agree that you may not use as part the knowledge you've gained as part of any tuition-based or for-credit certification or program. So they brought a new concept into the world, where when they teach you something, they own what's in your head. And so you can only use it the way they want you to use it. If you want to use it for credit with this university, you're not allowed to do that. And I don't know if it can stand up in court. I hope not. To me, it seems like a Monty Python-esque idea. But that's what it says. And I know the lawyers, the conservative lawyers in most universities that say, oh, you can't accredit a Coursera program because the student doesn't own the knowledge that's in their head. And it's a very new concept, but there's a lot of these new control concepts coming up. As I mentioned, David was saying about you buy but you don't get. which is a very new concept. You buy an e-book, but you don't own it. Yeah, so it's a useless credential. So what we're looking at a course, so you can have a MOOC, the content, peer learning, the interaction, and the accreditation, formal assessment. They do not have to be together. We can disaggregate them. And that's what we're looking at, the disaggregation. And with that, we're starting off with the Mini-MOOC model at the Open Education Resource University. I've got to tell you, at the meeting on yesterday, we found out we are no longer the OER University. We are the OER Universities, because many jurisdictions do not allow you to use the word university unless you have an active legislation. So it's the OER Universities. So you get the first lessons for assessment and accreditation, and we award 1 credit. And we recruit students to pay a fee for the final 2 credits. So that's one way of approaching it and assuring some kind of a financial sustainability model. But the Open Education Resource Universities recognizes that the present systems that we have are unsustainable and they are not scalable. So it's not a matter of, oh, we keep our present system or we go to this system. We know that the ones we have, we cannot stay there. They're not working. It's not happening. We need cost-effective learning systems with quality. I believe that MOOCs are part of the solution, but it doesn't have to be a MOOC in the way that Coursera and edX are moving forward. It could be that way, but it can also be our way, at the public university way of the OER Universities project. And this model, created at True University by Norm Friesen and Judith Murray, puts it very simply what we're talking about. The traditional model, you have our students at our faculty using our courses, and they get our credential. The OERU model is any learners, not even students, any learners using any faculty or no faculty at all, using any course materials, preferably OER, but using any materials. But if they want an Athabasca University credential, it's our credential, and we do the assessment. And the same with the 30 partners in the OER University. For them to give their credential, they do the assessment. But what we've agreed to do among the 30 universities is if any one of them give a credential, they can transfer to any one of the other universities. So, there's a major opportunity for us. But if the public institutions don't adapt, then the gap can and will be filled by private for-profit entrepreneurs. And I believe good luck to them. If we in the public sector can't do it, let somebody who can do it. And if they can make money on it, why can't we even create a sustainable ecology on it? And part of the problem in the public sector is, and I've found this for the last 20 years, you go to any Department of Education in any university in North America, and you mention the word cost effectiveness and they'll kick you out. They're frightened to death of the word cost effectiveness. But what's wrong with cost effectiveness? What's wrong if we save the government money in our education? What's wrong if we can teach 10,000 students for the same price it costs us to teach 50 students? Why is this a problem? We need this. We need scalable systems that can do that in an effective and manner with quality, because we cannot be satisfied. And to me, the main challenge of the 21st century for us, not just as educators, but as a society, is we have 7 billion people. How are we going to educate them? We can't leave them down without an education. We have to find ways of educating them. And one of the big ways, of course, is with the challenge for credit. and we have that at our university, is a student says, I know second year French, and we say, oh, do you now? Here's our assessment, we pay for the assessment, we assess them and we say, well, yes, you do know second year French, here's your credits. Another one says, biology. I know second year biology or first year biology. Here's the test, do it. And we need to do that, but we need to automate it to make it very cost effective. Right now, we do not have a cost effective system, but we are working on automating. And we can do this with computerized testing. We can use multiple choice and essays, and there's many different ways of doing automated testing. It's not just multiple choice. You can have automated marking of essays, and they're very good at the moment. They're getting better all the time, but right now I think that they're good enough. Peer assessment is another way we could be looking at developing. Portfolios, projects. There's many different ways of assessing students, and they challenge for credit. Is basically they come to you and say, I know this, and test me on it and see if we can do it. Now here's a sustainable MOOC scenario. A course price $650, but because of the cost of the professors, tutors, etc., and ancillary work, it costs us $600 to deliver that course. So we're only making about $50 on the course, and this is an average. Some of our courses are higher, some are lower. What if we could get the challenge exam price down to the cost of $50 and we charge $150? That way we make $100 on each course. So as, and this is one of the main arguments we've had against the OER University initiative at our institution, is that it will bleed our regular students. But what we'll find is that that these learners, instead of taking our regular courses and paying full tuition, they'll just take the test. Well, if we make as much money on the test, what harm is that? And not only that, what if we get, instead of a few hundred taking the test a year, we get 10,000? And what if a lot of those students fail and realize they need a tutor, and then they come to us and take the course? So there's different ways of approaching this, but the development of an ecology where we can have challenge exams available for students, anyone who feels they're competent in any subject area, could lead to a massive expansion of the number of people who have access to learning. And if we can drive the price down even lower than this, that would be better and increase the possibilities for accessibility. The real squeeze exerted by MOOCs, Haggard tells us, may not be on the campus face-to-face learning format, but rather on the paid-for online formats. That is, these big MOOCs are more of a threat to our online offerings than they are to traditional universities. At least that's what he's claimed, and I believe that. I think that online we better be very watchful of what's happening in this space. And Whitesides at MIT put it this way: affordability in the future may be the first requirement, not an afterthought. And the race may not be to the swift, but to the cheap. So I'll leave you with that. Thank you very much. Any questions? Do we have time for questions?
Maybe half a question.
Just the first half.
I'll give half an answer. Or talk to me after. I can't believe everyone agrees with me. Yes.
So your business model is revenue given by assessments?
By which?
Assessment.
Yes. It's you pay for the assessment. You get the course, the knowledge, everything for free. But if you want a formal credential, you come to us and we charge you for that.
So like at MIT or Stanford or someone like that,
Yeah.
if they are going to assess mastery, and if you do mastery, you go to come to our school, they'll still give you a certificate.
Yeah, they give you a certificate. It's not a credential. It's not worth anything. It's useless. Not only that, when you take their course, if you did want it assessed at Athabasca, legally you can't do it, although I think our lawyers would throw it out.
So the opportunity to be incremental to their current program?
Yeah, yes it would, but I think that we can have an ecology among the OERU universities, and we have in the United States Excelsior, which pretty well just does that type of thing of assessing colleges, that we can have anyone who takes any course online anywhere and they feel they've mastered it, they can go to that university and get credit for it. And that's, yeah.
That's all me.
Yeah, and that's really important, and that's why Coursera has that paragraph in the licensing, is they don't want you to go to Excelsior or to Athabasca unless Excelsior and Athabasca pay them something. I think that's what's behind it. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
We'll have to continue the questions, and maybe after we break. I think there's about a 20-minute break before our next session. So thank you very much.
Thank you.